This is live from my office, and that's my friend David Kerley if you're watching on YouTube on the Live from My Office channel. And if you're listening, trust me, he's there. How are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful, Steve. How are you?
Nice to see you as always. And let's do that faux promise we make to each other that we're going to play golf somewhere this summer.
Yeah,
You
that would
from
be
Washington
nice.
and me from Chicago.
Maybe I should come to, I haven't been to Chicago for a while. Maybe I should come to town.
You should, yeah, and I should come there as well. I know the president would like to see me.
I've read your newsletter. Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
he's with open arms, rolling out the red carpet, right off the East Wing. It's a little rough. Watch your step.
Actually, that's where he'd like me to stay while construction's going on. We both write for Substack, and if you don't like what I write on Substack, or you do, it's David Kerley's fault because he's the one that told me, take a look at this and try it. Your Full Throttle Substack is up and available all the time, and you got some fresh material now because we're about to go back to the moon.
We are going to the moon. It's looking pretty good for a launch a little after 5:30 Chicago time, 6:30 Eastern time tonight. The weather looks good, the rocket looks good, the capsule looks good. The crew has been ready for a couple of years. First time back to the moon in more than 50 years. They aren't landing on the moon. This is a swing by. This is actually, you know what this is, Steve? This is a checkout flight. This is to check out this capsule and make sure that its systems are working well for the astronauts. The environmental systems inside the capsule. And then we have a new administrator of NASA, which has changed a bunch of stuff. And as we continue the conversation, we'll talk about it. But this is a really big step. It's a rocket that has never carried humans into space before. It's carried one of these capsules before. It's called the SLS. Boeing is the main contractor on this big rocket. It's the biggest rocket that's out there. Elon Musk talks about his Starship booster, the big booster, but this is a big rocket, two boosters on the side strapped on, and a big main core that will carry the astronauts into low Earth orbit. They'll circle the Earth. Then they're going to do a slingshot around the moon. They will go deeper into space than any humans have ever been. In fact, breaking a record of the astronauts who landed on the moon. And they're only going to go by the moon once and then come back to Earth. Should be about 10-day mission. And I will tell you along the way here of where you need to be paying a lot of attention as to what happens with this spacecraft.
Well, several questions come to mind. First off, people will be cynical about Boeing. And even though they've had some trouble building and delivering airplanes, how are they doing on rockets?
Well, this rocket has had its problems. They've had some leaks of hydrogen and helium. And hydrogen it's a difficult little molecule. It's very small. It is the fuel for this rocket. The helium is the pressurization. They say they've got it all figured out. They changed out a bunch of connectors on the rocket and the external system that fills the propellant into the tanks. Right now, everything looks really good. It's a decent rocket. It's just had these issues in the past, but they think they're beyond those at this point.
So they do more than what I do, which is just reboot everything.
Yeah, they've had to actually change out some seals and some other things. The new administrator, actually talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago. That we keep on having this rocket's two times it's been on the pad has had these helium and hydrogen leaks. And it's like, why are we having the same problem? Let's fix this and go on. And they may have.
So the four-man crew, three men, one man, and a female, a man being the generic term, obviously. Um, I know they're calm, they're cool, they're collected. Their families probably are as well. But there's something about when I hear, oh, they've never had humans on this before, and they're trying it out and they're putting it through its paces. That's a little frightening.
Well, we did it three times back in the 60s too, with the Mercury, the Gemini, and the Apollo, all different rockets, and there were iterations of the rockets in between those missions. And the two, the commander and the pilot are Navy test pilots, and they've done a lot of this kind of stuff before. The Canadian who's on board is also a fighter jet pilot, and Christina Cook she's a scientist, but she's been to space. She's done the longest mission on the station of any woman. But when the two guys in charge of the spacecraft, the commander and the pilot, are test pilots, this is the right stuff. This is Top Gun, all wrapped into let's go see if this rocket works.
You've known these folks and you've talked to astronauts through the shuttle era. I'm sure you've crossed paths as I did back in the day with some of the greatest of all time, the Apollo guys.
Yep.
It almost seems, and I know they accept their mission as it's written, but it almost seems like a tease. You're going to the moon, you get one lap, and you're coming home.
Yeah, and I got a feeling that a couple of these astronauts may be done after this mission. This is because they may not get to space again. But would you take that ride? I'd take that ride in a second. I
100%.
mean,
I do it today.
right. So if you have the opportunity, you take what NASA offers. If they stick around, maybe they got a chance to get to the moon because the whole plan of this, and this is fascinating, I'd love to talk about this, is that the administration has changed from, two missions to the moon and then we're going to Mars to no, we're going to the moon and we're going to stay, we're going to build a base and we're going to learn how to live on a not nice planetary surface and then we'll go to Mars or try to go to Mars. So things have changed dramatically in this administration and these guys are very excited. And they've been there for the building of this rocket and this capsule. They've been there for a couple of years now. I mean, it's been much longer than they expected. But they all seem ready and their heads are in the right spot.
Yeah, my wife and I, on a road trip, went to the Kennedy Center 3 or 4 years ago and saw what was the Artemis at that point. It's incredible. I mean, if your kids, if you can connect your kids to this, it's a real gift to give them the love of science and the idea of what America can do. And the Kennedy Center is great. The Visitor Center is great, and the walk around is great, where you see these incredible rockets and ships to do things that nobody was supposed to do. It was all cartoons and comic book stuff. So I get the science and all that, but you know the arguments that are out there. Why are we? This is like the Cubs. Wait till 1909. Why are we going back to 1969? Why are we going back to the moon? Now, you just answered it briefly before to build a base and figure out how to move forward. Do we have to go back to the moon first to do that?
Um, yes, probably. Yes. I mean, it makes the most sense that you test systems because if there's a problem, you can get home pretty quickly. When you go to Mars, you're not coming home
Bye bye.
anytime. Yeah. Well, not necessarily bye-bye, but it's a year plus to get there and a year plus to get back. It's a couple of days to get back from the moon. So the great thing about low Earth orbit right now with the space station, you can be back in a couple of hours. Um, you can be back from the moon in a couple of days. Mars is a whole different deal. We need to have everything figured out. There are a lot of problems. It's not just no food, no water. There's radiation, the temperatures. I mean, there are a lot of things that we're going to learn on the moon and doing the moon base. And NASA has really always, in the last decade, this was the plan. They call it Moon to Mars. Let's go learn the lessons on the moon, and then we'll go to Mars. And the reason we're going back, Steve, are a couple. One is it's a competition. China's going, and the United States does not want to lose to China. There are things on the moon that might be useful here on Earth, which we will learn about. So all that's really important. Sorry for the beeping on my computer.
No, you're fine. I
Um,
can't even pick it up. The science that we learned from the Apollo program is incredible. And it's a couple of clicks away. If you ever want to Google up what did we get back for all the money we spent on going to the moon and Apollo and all that. His list is long. And it's amazing things, including you and I being able to talk like this because all the dominoes that fell were things that started with the space program. The new science that we'll get isn't just about the rocket program and all of that. I assume along the way they're going to be able to bring stuff home.
oh, you're going to be building habitats on the moon. Some of it you'll take there. There are companies that are working on the moon regolith, which is the surface dust and sand or the material that covers the moon, of converting it into bricks. How do you do that with resin and then build your habitat? There are so many things we can learn. And we are an exploratory creature. I mean, it's the reason that the Earth is populated by humans. Some species live only on certain continents. For millions and millions of years, we've been looking for the next thing, and this is all part of that.
Yeah, what's over there? That's always the curiosity, right?
Hey, before I forget, you mentioned the Kennedy Space Center, and you can see this at Kennedy, you can see it at Houston too. I talked about this rocket, and this is a big, big rocket. And you go look at those rockets that they sent the first guys up, the Mercury, the Redstones, they're like these tiny little things.
It's
I'm with
incredible.
you on the tour. If you have kids and there's any interest, do Houston or do the Space Center in Florida. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and 6 foot tall, 250 pound guys weren't going on the Apollo program. It's a little roomier where they're going now, but I was fascinated when I was reading some of this yesterday that the astronauts get strapped in hours before liftoff and they're ready to go. I would assume that's part of the physical training, just so maybe it's because I'm 65 now. I know I look younger, and sitting is painful at times. The idea that you're strapped into one position and then you can blast off, that's all got to be part of the mental and physical training, yes?
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting. They're in their pressure suits when they're strapped in. And NASA has designed this mission that they could stay in those suits. In case the environmental system inside the capsule doesn't work, they could stay in those suits for 6 days. It's their little basic, it's a spaceship within a spaceship. Because we don't know this thing on a test flight around the moon, the capsule worked really well. So the Orion capsule, there's about twice as much room inside as an Apollo capsule, but there are four of them. And think about it. I mean, it's like four people, if you stripped out a minivan and four of you live in there for 10 days. Um, yeah, there's
Yeah.
more room and whatnot. This one actually has a toilet versus what they had in Apollo. But this is why they've been together as a crew for a long time. You're going to be in really close quarters for a very long time. And this is part of the selection process of picking astronauts. And these people were picked specifically because they work with others well.
That's why they haven't called me. And the strapped in thing is incredible too, because the only thing I've seen that's more secure than a seat on a NASA project rocket is trying to get a baby into a car seat in the car. You need NASA astronauts to get you into these seats now, and also to get you out. Not that as a grandfather of three, I've had any issues.
Once in
All right,
space, it'll be very easy.
the other cynical questions that come up from folks is, we got a lot of things we need to spend money on. What are we getting back for the money we're spending here, and how soon will we get that money back?
Yeah, well, NASA has a list. You can go on their website of all the stuff that has come out of the space program over the years. I think Velcro was first used
Yeah.
in by NASA in space. I mean, it's a very long list. I don't know if you can argue whether it's paid for itself or not. There are a lot of things to spend money on, and this government is spending a lot of things on a lot of money on a lot of things right now. This seems pretty appropriate to me. I mean,
I
we
would be
are,
okay
this
without
is
$1 billion a day on a war in Iran, but that's just me.
this is the new space race. And it's not Russia, it's China this time. They are our competitor in so many ways. And
What do we know about the Chinese program? How advanced are they?
they're doing pretty well. They've got a space station. They've got some good rockets. They get crews up there to their space station. They put more spacecraft on the moon as a government than NASA has of late. They're on the dark side now with the rover. They're doing pretty well. I actually think so. I mentioned this a little early, and you're not leading me there, but I'm going to go there. The Trump administration, when they came in a year plus ago, said that they were going to cut NASA's budget by 25%, and we were going to do the two planned moon missions, Artemis 2 and 3. And 3 was supposed to be the landing on the moon, astronauts' boots on the ground, and that was it. And then we're going to Mars. And this is when Musk was still pretty involved. with the administration at that point. And the current administrator, Jared Isaacman, who flew with SpaceX twice and did what they called a spacewalk, he did poke his head out of the Dragon capsule, said basically that's what we're going to do. So that was in this almost a year ago, in the spring of last year. By last fall, it had all changed. Isaacman was renominated, and the space policy came out from the Trump administration. And in the interim, in between those two times, Congress fully funded NASA instead of a 25% cut that the administration asked for, and added Artemis missions, added 4 and 5. And then the Trump administration flipped and said, yep, it's more Artemis, go to the moon, we're going to stay, and moon to Mars, we'll do Mars down the road. Um, I've been asking the question for a couple of months now. What really changed there in the administration? And I think it's twofold. One was that Congress told them, and I think there's bipartisanship on the Artemis program between Ted Cruz and Maria Cantwell of Washington, who actually got that pushed through the full funding and the additional missions. And it's the Chinese competition.
Right.
I think the administration realizes that, if we don't stay Johnny on the spot here, we're going to have a problem. So now the new administrator has changed Artemis. This is Artemis 2, which is, as I said, the shakedown flight. Check it out, make sure the thing works. Artemis 3 is supposed to be a landing, but we don't have landers right now. A whole nother story. So he has changed Artemis 3 to a go around the Earth and dock with one of these landers that we hope will be flying by next year. And Artemis 4 will now land on the moon and put astronauts back on the surface. Chinese want to do it by 2030. NASA says they're going for 2028, think 2029, depending on how things go.
Yeah. So as long as things go smoothly. Now, stupid questions galore here. But when you or I were going to do some sort of rehab project on the house, you're going to need a Home Depot up the street. Last I heard, there wasn't one on the moon. How do you get the things that you need to have to build a base on the moon to the moon?
Yeah, so there are a couple things that have changed when this program started. Um, One is there's a big commercial program. It's called CLIPS, Commercial Lunar. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but basically all the trucks, basically the semi trucks that are going to carry stuff,
Yeah.
that's all private companies who get paid by NASA to land this stuff on the moon. This is a multi-year thing, by the way. If we have a moon base by the middle of the next decade, it'll be pretty small. You could look at their graphics and you see all this stuff spread out. That's 12, 15 years away. Um, the other thing the administrator did was he changed the architecture a little bit. The original plan was to have an orbiting space station around the moon, called Gateway, that the astronauts could basically go live on instead of staying on the surface, which actually makes a lot of sense, but it's also very expensive and difficult and whatnot. Gateway has been what they say is paused. Um, I think we would be talking about a space station around the moon in the 2040 range at this point. So yeah, the commercial folks, and you've seen a couple of landers already from the commercial side getting to the moon, and the idea is to get more and more loads. Now, this is where Elon Musk, I think, has a shot of doing something good. NASA picked his lander, the Starship, which you've seen has still hasn't orbited the Earth yet. Um, they picked it because he was farther along in developing a spaceship that could land on the moon. Now they've opened it up and added Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin back in, so we have two competing again for a lander to get to the moon. Both need to be refueled, which has never been done in space before, which is another problem. You can write all these things down and ask more questions later. But that Starship, if Musk and SpaceX can get it to work, can carry a lot of cargo to the moon to help build this moon base, once they can make it work. At this point, the last time I remember really researching it, a Starship would need 10 refueling starships in low Earth orbit just to get to the moon. So we got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of stuff to go on here. The physics say it's possible. It's just going to take some time and money.
Well, it to me is, a geek for this stuff. It's very exciting to hear this, and you've been reporting on this better than anybody for years and years and years. Your level of confidence in the people that are doing this, the various agencies that have to be involved, bringing in commercial, the geopolitical stuff that goes on between Russia and us and China, you can see all those things meshing to make it work.
I will say, yes, it's possible. I think the changes the administrator has made in the last couple months are all really positive and will have the potential to make this more realistic than it was, you know, a year ago.
Do we depend on Russia for this stuff at all anymore?
Well, we do a little bit to get to the space station, but they're not involved with Artemis. Artemis does have a long list of international partners that are all involved. In fact, some of them got burned because Gateway is being quote unquote paused. There were a lot of the European Union, others really deeply involved in helping to build that space station, which is now, you know, way on the back burner. I mean, it's like a back burner you can't even reach right now. So no, the Russians are not involved. They did it. The Chinese were offered to get involved. They passed. So it's mostly the crew that you would expect, Western powers, and then some smaller countries that want to be involved. The Gulf states are involved too, as well.
So maybe a weird aside here, but when I think about how the media, where you and I come from, how the media plays these things out and properly reports these things, there's not a lot of yous out there. People who are steeped in journalism want to do the right thing, ask the right questions, get the story out. With the cynicism this country has about spending money on space travel, they need more than a press release. Is the communication shop at NASA up to snuff to, move the ball forward?
Um,
It's a fair question.
yeah, I mean, it's hard. Here's an example. NASA was doing a briefing a couple of days ago at the Kennedy Space Center, and the media center is, I think it's a mile and a half to some of the launch pads. And during the briefing, in which NASA executives are talking to reporters, they had to pause because there was a SpaceX launch and the noise was kind of interrupting the news conference. Now, those executives were not out watching that launch because it's happening so often. And you got to give great cred to SpaceX for the pace of launches and what they're doing. It's pretty remarkable. But that goes to your question of when it becomes routine, I'm not telling you about every jet that takes off from O'Hare or from Dulles Airport because there are 100 of them every day.
Sure.
Um, Now we don't go to the moon. We haven't been to the moon in more than 50 years, so this is a big deal. And uh, I think NASA's PR shop could do a better job. There's no doubt about it. Some of that is the administration, and even the last administration. Um, you know, the amount of information. I tell this story about the shuttle. When the shuttle was flying, I went down and did a bunch of stories, and I had a notebook, a binder that
Uh-huh.
was this thick. That if you wanted to know something about a shuttle, it was on page 322 about whatever system in the shuttle. The lack of details today, for me, as someone who covers this, is regrettable. Um, but you will see a lot of attention. The reason I'm talking to you today, I'm talking to somebody tomorrow morning, is that this is grabs the public attention. It's a first. It's going to get a lot of attention as these
Yeah, but the
folks.
other thing, the other thing I wonder about too, though, is does China win on desire? China controls their media. This is a point of pride. It's an Asian cultural thing to some extent as well. This would be a huge point of pride for China to beat us. So you only have the political will of whoever's in the Oval Office at the time, whoever's in Congress at the time. Do they have a greater desire and or momentum to get it done?
Well, they do
And
whatever they
frankly, I don't
want to
care
do.
if China beats us or not, as long as we're moving humanity forward. But it's an issue, obviously.
Oh, you should care because they want to go to some of the same spots we want, and whoever's there first gets to plant the flag and say this is ours. There's a lot at stake here as to where you get on the moon. They all
Put that down, then I do care.
okay, thank you. It's the South Pole, by the way. Very inhospitable, very cold, not great light, but there might be ice there, which can means water, which means hydrogen and oxygen, which means fuel, means drinking, means a lot of things. Breathing. Um, yeah, it's very important with the Chinese. Chinese, listen, I spent some time in China covering China. That government does what it wants. It determines where it's going. It says we are going here, and this is what our GDP is going to be this year. This is what we're going to do, and that's what it is. I don't think they really, it doesn't matter what the public thinks in China. It's a much different, it is a point of pride. They'd love to beat the Americans back onto the moon. Um, you know, but as I mentioned earlier, I think this new space race is part of what's pushing this effort to get back by 2028, 2029.
Long after you and I are gone, the idea would be if we are continuing our path towards stupidity and oblivion on this planet, we'll have a place to go. It's not going to be easy to move 8 billion people. You're not all going to be able to fit on the bus. But the idea would be the moon would be the interim stop on hopefully finding the next Earth or a place where we could all live. Is that science fiction still, or are people working to that end?
Well, whatever you think of Elon Musk, his driving force here of getting to Mars is he calls it the flicker of consciousness, saving the flame of consciousness. That we're the only species that, I mean, some people consider other animals on this planet to be conscious, others don't. That is his aim that if we mess this up so badly down here, that the race continues, the human race continues someplace else, whether that's on the moon or Mars or some other planet. Um, you know, seems like we're doing a lot of things to screw this place up. Um,
Yeah, it's nauseating. The AI piece of it, and obviously science is way ahead in the AI game, but the AI piece of it is fascinating to me as well because AI is developing at a clip where AI code writers have become kind of useless because AI taught itself to write its own code. That's just as a symbol of where it's headed. What role does AI play in this, and how do they make sure it's a positive?
well, we'll use it for a lot of things, to help us plan, plot, decide things as it already is. I mean, AI can do a lot of positive things. Do you ever watch Colbert's questionnaire on his show, on the Late
Yeah, of
Show?
course. Yep.
One of the questions
Well, for
is
another month or so.
yeah, right. What's your favorite action movie? Is one of his questions, right? What's yours?
The original Die Hard.
Yeah, very good
Yeah,
movie.
the first one.
I often answer, even though I hate the soundtrack of this movie, Terminator. Um, and the reason is AI. And it kind of scared the living bejeebers out of me and still does. James Cameron didn't write that movie or do that movie thinking that, AI would send Terminator back to kill the person who was trying to, you know, stop the machines in the future. Um, he actually he had a fever dream apparently of this skeletal thing coming out of a fire, which you see in the movie. But I think that movie says a lot about the possibilities here. So the question is, AI will be involved, and then if you're on the moon or Mars, will AI do a little howl on Dave or not?
Well, that's the great thing, right? And I don't want to go down a political road with this, but you and I have both seen congressional hearings, which have become reality shows and stupid beyond belief, but congressional hearings where the ancient leaders don't know how to get their own email or how to sign in, and they're counting on 20 somethings to explain AI to them or social media and things of that nature. It all goes back to the same thing. You got to vote for people who are going to be the next generation, who are going to understand change and all of that. So we're still in primary season, boys and girls. The primaries are the playoffs. The general election is the Super Bowl. You don't get to the Super Bowl without winning the playoffs. So wherever you are, please vote in your primaries.
So,
All right.
I don't, as you know, when I've appeared with, joined you before, I don't really like to get into politics because I like to cover what I cover and do it as straightforward as I can. Um, but it's interesting. You think about the internet that was developed by the US government. DARPA came up with the internet, gave it to private enterprise, which brought you the tech bros and everything that they do. DARPA did not do social media. The tech bros created social media and Congress did nothing. They did Section 230 for because the tech industry wanted it. AI, DARPA had a chance, and you can go back to a couple of presidents, and some of them had D's after their name, that did not have DARPA do AI. They left it to private enterprise. And you are now in a position where you have no regulations over AI, social media, the ripping off of editorial content, yours, mine, and everybody else. There are no rules or regulations. And everybody talks about how terrible the government is, but I would argue that was a job for government to give us some
100%.
rules about social media, about publishing. These guys say they're not publishers, and yet they take everybody's content and put it on the web and charge some advertising, make some money on it. And now we're at this AI thing, and this handful of companies, 10 or 11, 12 companies, are kind of deciding where we're going. I mean, look at what happened to the Pentagon with Anthropic and
Right.
OpenAI. This is a malpractice by your government. Whether you believe the government should be involved or not, I guess I don't think this is a political question. I just
No,
think
it's not. It's factual.
yeah, who should control who should be listen, set up the barricades along the road. Here's the road, guys. You can do anything you want in between here. But we don't even have these barriers on the side. Anyway,
No, and no sign that there's going to be. Congress can't agree that the sky is blue.
that was a
So
that that's as that was a mild rant. That's as ranty as I'm gonna get.
no, 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 it's good. Yeah, I wish you'd write a book. I mean, you've taught yourself, you've covered and taught yourself the history of space in a way that this is just going to be a bigger and bigger story as the months and the next few years go on. And it's a major task, but I wish you'd do it.
Well, I appreciate that. This retirement thing's kind of nice, though, Steve.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar, even though I don't use the R word. But I tell you what you don't want to do. You don't want to take someone with, people go, well, how'd you get a head this big? There's a lot of ADD going on up here. And you know what you don't want to do with an ADD brain is tell them, yeah, you can do whatever you want whenever you want to do it. So
Yeah. The problem is you're bouncing off the walls, right?
I can have a really good idea at 9, and by 10 o'clock, I'm going, oh, it's a Hogan's Heroes rerun. Let me watch that.
Well, as I like to say, people say, "How is it not having to go to work?" And I said, "Well, I think about the night before. I think, hey, tomorrow I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then I get up and I think, yeah, I'm not going to do that today. Maybe tomorrow or the next day."
Well, we're not just two old guys sitting on the porch waiting for our lemonade to be brought to us because this stuff matters. And let's go all the way back to the beginning here to wrap this up. And that is step one is do this mission, safely get the rocket there, slingshot it, bring it back, learn whatever you learn in that process. And what is step two?
Step two will be a mission around the Earth to do a docking with either the SpaceX Starship or the Blue Origin Blue Moon lander to make sure that you can dock. I mean, the plan was originally that the first time that it's called the Orion capsule, the capsule that the astronauts are in. The only time that they would dock was around the moon. And the administrator said, maybe we should do that in low Earth orbit to make sure it works. And then following that comes the landing on the moon, boots on the ground, on the moon surface again. A couple things here, Steve. Both SpaceX was having trouble developing its Starship to land on the moon, and this administration reopened the bidding war, the competition, and let Blue Origin back in, Jeff Bezos's company, who has a lander that is much smaller than the Starship, is more like the lunar lander I mean, it's much bigger than the lunar lander that landed during Apollo. But both of these spacecraft have to be refueled in low Earth orbit to make it to the moon. And that's never been done before. It's a gas station in space that's never existed. So a
I mean,
lot,
that part of the story is incredible to me
yeah.
because you're not getting out and going in and getting beef jerky. You you're gassing up and hoping that you can get to the next fueling station.
And we keep this, we keep the propellant in liquid form. It has to stay cold. If it warms up too much, it's called boiling off. It becomes a gas. It's like what happens on your stove. You boil water, and if you leave it there long enough, there's no more water because it's all gone into gas and disappeared. So that's a big test for both of these companies. They say they can do it. If that happens, that you can refuel, and there'll have to be landings on the moon unmanned by both of these landers. I mean, the Starship has been into space, but it's not orbited the Earth. Um, and Bezos's craft has not been in space yet. So, I mean, there are big hurdles to go here, but it's really exciting. And I'm telling you what, this launch and this mission are really fun. The one thing I want to say, and one thing, tell your audience, um, all of this, the rocket, first time astronauts, you talked about that. The return is the one place I'm going to pay a particular attention. The heat shield on Orion is kind of like Apollo's, but different materials. And the last one that went around the moon on a test mission and came back, it burned in a way that surprised NASA. It didn't, there were deeper burns and things happened that weren't supposed to
They don't like
happen.
surprises, right?
Well, yeah, and especially when you have astronauts inside. There were no astronauts. It didn't burn through the heat shield and get to the capsule, but it didn't work as expected. So the return of these four astronauts, the trajectory is going to be different, to try and change the way they bounce on the atmosphere and then come into the atmosphere. NASA seems very confident that this change of plans and trajectory will mean that the Orion is safe. And then it goes to the parachutes, and I've written a bit about parachutes. I mean, NASA people, you think the parachutes have been around for 115 years, 20 years. Um, they're still kind of tricky. So I'm most con I'm less concerned about launch and the mission and more concerned about reentry, personally.
Well, it makes total sense. That's where the problems have been, right? And is this a water landing when they're on the
It
return?
is, yeah, splashdown. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's going to be fascinating. I assume you'll write about it on Substack.
Yeah, I was due a piece I was going to write before this launch. Now I decided let's get it up in space, and then I'll write a piece. And then I've got a piece coming on the administrator, Isaacman, who some on the Hill, some of the Democratic senators are a little concerned about his close ties to Elon Musk. Um, I think I'm going to write a little bit about he's shown some leadership. Made some interesting moves, and he's had NASA take its fair share of blame for things that haven't worked over the last decade or so.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's good to hear you're positive about Isaacson because a lot of the pub we have heard about him is questioning and leans on negative. It's David Kerley. He's smarter than you and I. And Full Throttle is a Substack newsletter. And if you subscribe, well, I mean, financially support the efforts that David makes. He can make a call, maybe get you on one of these missions.
yeah,
No promises.
indeed.
But in the
We can go.
meantime, it's always a pleasure to have you on, buddy, and I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Steve. If we do go to Mars, they want people who may not have to come back. Maybe you and I should raise our hands for that one.
So funny. People go, "Would you jump out of an airplane?" And I go with the old George Carlin line.
Yeah,
Why would you jump out of a plane that's not broken? But I'm telling you now, I wouldn't jump out of an airplane here on Earth, but I'd go to the moon tomorrow.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. People ask me, "Would you do it?" And I'm like, in a second, in a second.
It's just too cool.
Always a
Thank
pleasure,
you, my
my
friend.
friend.
We'll talk again.
All right, see you.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochraneshow.com for more.